Looking at the 20th and 21st century, we stand speechless, engrossed, disgusted with the level of human evil that has been demonstrated in personal life of people, at the level of nations as well, at a systemic level. We see first war killing more than 35, 37 million people, double more in the Second World War. Then we see this totalitarian regimes such as Nazism killing more than 25 million people, or later in the communist regime, 100 million people died because of ideologies. And we stand speechless after the Holocaust, thinking how deep the human problem goes. It penetrates all the holes, all the pores of our society and human being. If it's like this octopus with multiple tentacles getting everywhere, shaping human existence, the problem goes very deep. And we're realizing if we don't do something about it, we're going to be extinguished soon as a human race. The greatest mind of 20th and 21st century tried to solve this conundrum and this idea, how to solve this fundamental problem of human nature. Here comes Marx. He says, I know what the problem is. It's the matter of social constellation. By creating the social equilibrium where everybody is equal, creating this kind of society of equal people, where everybody is contributing towards a common goal, we're going to solve the human problem, because the whole history can be interpreted through this dialectic of those who are underprivileged trying to get on the top of this social ladder. And here we go, the experiment goes, this is his diagnosis, this is his cause of the problem, social inequality. And then he offers his solution, which is communism, and we all know how it went. More than 100 million people died due to a very naive theory that by shaping our society better, we will get away and we will get from the human problem which is penetrating our society. Yet, he neglected that the problem goes much deeper on a psychological level. It's of a moral nature. There are people misusing the system. And then Freud, the father of modern psychology, he says, I know what the problem is. It's actually in human soul. So the way to solve it is to dig in your past, because we have all been broken and injured in the past. And these traumas are shaping our mind today. And the way to get liberated, the way to live full existence is actually to kill the cause of the problem, to be aware of what happened in the past. There are many people who benefit from some of the positive effects of this therapeutic process, but the problem of evil, the problem of hatred, the problem of resentment and shame still remains. Then we have different religious systems, such as Buddhism, saying, okay, there are 4 foundational beliefs in Buddhism. Siddhartha Gautama Buddha would say the whole life is natha, which technically means pain. The whole life is pain, and we technically agree with that. This is actually a metaphor in the language that he uses of a broken ankle, and every step that you make on the way is actually creating pain. You are born as a result of a painful labor of a woman. You are born, and then you experience different traumas in your life. Even when you leave your home, you suffer. When you get married, yes, that's a celebratory event, yet you feel that you're leaving your past. There is an element of sadness there. When you die, there's lots of pain there. So what he says is, Buddha would say, okay, cause of this problem is dukkha, which is technically desire. Third step, by killing the desire, you kill the problem. And then the 4th step is 8 types of yogas which help you kill your desires, deny even your natural desires for food, for sex, for protection. Deny yourself those rights and you're going to be happy. Instead of embracing life, deny yourself. But people still end up starving themselves to death and being unhappy. A very selective, very reductionist definition of the problem always results in a monstrous solution, incomplete solution, which has a lot of victims. So we saw the attempts of different theories and different social efforts to create a better society, even democracy, neglecting that the problem of democracy is actually uninformed voter. Not everybody can vote about global issues without information. Enlightenment offers its own solution by eradicating the ignorance, by enlightening the people, bringing them education. We will solve the problem. What we end up is actually more wiser a form of manipulation, more sophisticated way of doing sin. but the problem is still there. And then comes Christianity. Some of its forms are very destructive. There are theories which plagued even Adventism in the midst of 20th century. M.L. Andreasen's last generation theology, that you on your own will reach the perfection. He defines the problem behaviorally. By changing and altering your behavior, you will gradually also influence your desire, and one by one, your sins will be eradicated. So let's say you win your battle over tobacco, you win your battle against maybe alcohol, you win all sorts of battles, which are always behavior-centered. By the end, you will be clean because sin will be eradicated. You don't even need somebody who is mediator, Jesus Christ. You will stand on your own before Christ comes, clean, because Christ's character will be perfectly revealed in you before Christ comes. Only when Christ sees that his character is revealed in his people, then he will come. What a monstrous claim that solutions can come from within the system. We can never live without God. Even in non-sinful condition, we still depend on him for our life. The idea of autonomous self is one of the most subversive ideas in the whole universe, that we can do it on our own. Solution has to come from the outside, because the system itself is so corrupted that there is no healing to it. There is no redeeming even the elements of it. As Genesis 6:9 would say, every human evil is only, always evil. Triple evil. Every human thought, not only some thoughts, every human thought, always, not at times, always, only evil. That's how deep the manifestation of evil goes. What a pessimistic view of human nature. Okay? It goes beyond human ability to help ourselves. We need solution coming from without, coming from outside, with somebody who is not affected by it. And this is the dominant claim of Christianity. There is a way. There is the way how God himself deals with human problem which goes deep into the psychology of human beings, which also manifests socially, which is corrupting our systems. There is a way to deal with that. And in the Bible, we have description of how sin functions, the inner dynamics of sin. We have Adam and Eve, who are technically, their sin stands in their brain. They start to distrust God. Relationship has been broken. We can see that in the fact that they start to blame each other and snake and God, the broken relationship. And then we see the progress of this evil through Lamech and then to the time of Noah. We can see how it evolves. Maybe something starts as a naive mistake, ends up being your main addiction. There is a song which summarizes human evil, written by Bob Dylan. The song is entitled Hotel California. You all heard about this song, yeah? Welcome to the Hotel California. What a lovely place, what a wonderful place. It has this appeal. And there's a guy driving his Mercedes-Benz in this desert of California, and then he sees this beautiful woman opening the door and saying, welcome, there is place for all, there is party, there is beauty here. He goes in, first verse he's enjoying. Lyrics are describing him and partying. Second verse, he realizes that he's becoming an addict to drugs. And then he tries to run away from that. But the third verse actually describes the despair of people realizing that defection is actually now part of their life. He tries to run through the corridors. He opens the door, and then he sees the ceiling, which is all glassy and mirror-like ceiling. That means you pray to God, but all you see is your own reflection. There is nothing coming from the top. And then he says, we are the prisoners of our own device. We created a prison. We're trying to kill the beast, this addiction, with the metal needles. They're trying to kill it, but it doesn't really work. And then he runs through the corridor, losing all the hope, and he comes to the mysterious figure of a night porter and asking, how do I get out of this hotel, Hotel California? And then the porter tells him the most depressing phrase in the whole song, which is, you can always check in, but you can never check out. That's the nature of sin. You can check in, but you can never check out on your own. And you might be depressed because there is no solution to that. But the good news, there is solution, but it has to come from the outside. What we're going to do now is we're going to deal with this beast, with these tentacles, which goes in different aspects of our life. We're going to see how God solves it. These 2 weeks were all about forgiveness. That's the key word, the F word, forgiveness. Forgiveness being at the root of human problem and solving it at its roots. How are we gonna do this? I selected only one text. There is so many texts. This is one of the most profound Christian solutions and teachings that we can find in the Bible. It solves the problem of evil, human wickedness, human problem. But because we have a limited time, I will focus only on one psalm, because we are in a sequence of psalms this year. We are studying psalms, only 2 verses. And I wish that you recognize the pearls and diamonds that these verses contain. It summarizes different levels and different multifaceted, multidimensional response that God has to this problem. Bible does not have a naive definition of a problem, naive diagnosis. It sees many different angles. There is more than 40 words only in the Old Testament naming different aspects of sin. In English, we have very limited language, as if we didn't think about what our problem is. Okay, but Jews, they were preoccupied with it, and they had developed language describing how deep the sin goes. And we can find 4 of those words in the text that we're going to read. Psalm 32, 1-2. And this psalm is actually called the Beatitude of the Old Testament. You know the Beatitude of Jesus in Matthew 5? Actually, we have the Beatitude in the Old Testament. One of the most famous texts about forgiveness. And this text reveals 4 different stages through which God takes us in His attempt to resolve human problem. So this is how the text starts. Blessed is the one. Blessed being the key word there. Asher in Hebrew, which was technically the name of the tribe in Israel, which never had wars. They lived in the middle. Everybody else was fighting the enemies, but they had a nice ride. They were happy. They were prosperous. They were even known as people who are preparing delicate meals to the kings and, really enjoying the reality, immersing themselves in the fullness of life. So people were jealous of them. To be Asher, part of Asher tribe, was something great. So the text says, you can be Asher too. There is prosperity, there is fulfillment of human potential, there is blessedness and happiness available to you too, not only in heaven, but on this earth. So Asher are those whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the one to whom the Lord does not impute iniquity, and in whose spirit is no deceit. To me, when I read it in English, it sounds like same thing said 4 times. It's simply because we have very limited language to get the fullness of ideas behind. Let me just briefly zoom in to detect the problem that this text is dealing with. So first we have the problem of transgression. Then we have something which is named sin, and then iniquity and deceit. So those 3 words, when they are found together, they have particular meaning. In the middle word, which is hatat, means aiming at the target and you miss the target. So this is missing the mark. Think about that. Sin is not only transgressing the law and consciously going against God. It's sometimes just not fulfilling your full potential. You were created to do something, but maybe you make a series of decisions. You choose wrong choices for your career, for your partner, and you live half life. For Bible, that's also the result of sin. So somebody not fulfilling the full potential. Wow, this category includes a lot of people who don't want necessarily to be against God, but simply they slipped. Then there is a second aspect, which is on your left side, pesha, which is this. Fist. It means like open, rebellious attitude against God. I'm doing it, and I know it's wrong, but I'm still doing it to hurt you. That's the sin. And God is saying, Israel is adding pesha to hatat. Not only did they sin by coincidence, not knowing what's best for them, they're actually rebelliously doing it in spite of me or against me. So that's a bit heavier weight of sin. But now we have the third one, which is crooked or avon. This is a person who sits and schemes and creates plans how to harm somebody, sometimes spending months and years trying to do that, how to humiliate the colleague, how can he be better in the eyes of the board or whatever, and then you try to undermine somebody. That's the person who schemes sinning, even calculates in this formula. Okay, once I do that, once I get certain gains and benefit, I will repent to God. He will always accept me. So I can just continue with my life, but with this benefit of having extra money or better status and so on. So this is a type of perverse scheming, planning sin. So text says, we are dealing with the problem and everybody's part of it. It's dealing with the fundamental problem of human nature. All sorts of sins are falling under this umbrella. So that's the all-encompassing phrase. When this combination of terms happens, even in the Day of Atonement text in Leviticus 16, always identify the totality of human evil. God says, no matter who you are, whether you consciously sin against me or coincidence, or if you're scheming, no matter who you are, where you find yourself on the scale of the defective humanity, I have a solution for you. There is a way of overcoming it. There is a way of living a better existence. There is a way of redemption. And this is what the Psalm talks about. What is the solution? How do we get from here? We're going to come to the topic, more brighter side of the topic, because I started very dark. Because against the background of very dark tapestry, you can see the acts of God even more shinier. You can see the beauty and the depth of on divine forgiveness, who goes very deep to solve in its root the problem of human evil. And we have it accessible today. You can experience it today, not wait for some years in the future and He's coming. You can still get part of the solutions already today, and you can be blessed. You can live full existence. You can have harmonious relationship. Before we go into that, let's think about first where we are, what we bring to God, and let's confess those sins to God so He can start His transformative process. What I'm about to share with you is so beautiful and so hopeful for us as humanity, and I hope I'll manage to give it justice. These two verses are so rich, and here we discover the depth of God's forgiveness, which transcends any human attempt to understanding. What's the solution? What's the solution that we have here? We're going to be practical now. So here we are. What are those four divine aspects that I mentioned of divine forgiveness? Because problem of sin is multifaceted, multidimensional. It requires also multidimensional, multifaceted solution. It's not an easy task to do, but help has to come from the outside, as we define it in the first part. I will invite maybe David to come here in front. Now we're going to test your knowledge from the Bible. I'm kidding. Don't worry. Okay. So here we live this life, which is like a black and white, lacks the color. We have fallen, and God wants to raise us higher. What's the first step God does? Okay, if you take this and put around your neck, let's say this symbolizes this girlfriend that broke your heart, and you're going from day to day resenting her, hating her, gossiping about her and so on to her friends. It really bothers you. So there's a stone for you here. And now this is actually maybe an attempt to, let's say, cover up that you actually had a girlfriend. So your mom doesn't know that you're having a girlfriend, and you said you're going to study math with your partner from the school, and you'll go spend a lot of time in the library with the girlfriend, but always devising lots of lies to cover up for your, maybe your mom doesn't like that person, male or female, and whatever it is. Yeah, so that's something you maybe not a part of in her eyes, so you don't fulfill expectation. Therefore, you have something to carry here because you're devising lies to cover up. Maybe this is one of your colleagues. Maybe if you're in internship, I think as a business student, possibly you will be in HP. There's a lot of people who are competing. Maybe you want to be better than others, so you're devising the ways how you can make them look worse and you be better. So here you go, something that burdens you. Maybe this is that sin of yours, which you're hiding, nobody knows about it. You'll be very ashamed for somebody to expose. Don't cry. I will not expose it. Yeah. It really sucks all the energy from your bones, and you feel like, wow, if somebody knew this, if I'm exposed, if there is a whistleblower, I'll be in trouble. And you hide that the entire life. You create masks. You pretend. You try to be somebody, but you know inside that there is some kind of perversion, some kind of defect. Nobody else knows, only you. That's heavy. So how does it feel? Try to walk. Imagine now every single sin, conscious and unconscious, adding to this weight. You start to walk, but soon you'll not be able to walk. Now imagine you reading a book like that or going to the shop like that, and this is heavy and heavier. It really doesn't allow you to be free and to run and to do lots of things. It reduces your mobility and so on. It burdens you. It burdens you. That's what sin does to us. It creates the burden that we are carrying and masking ourselves, pretending that we are better. And this starts already very early. There are those, they say, ontological shame, which is babies in 1 or 2 years old, they start to feel ashamed just because they're smaller than others, weaker than others. Maybe when they start to go to school, they don't have this equally nice lunch box as others. They have different clothes. They're afraid of not understanding the games and rules of the games and being exposed as stupid. So all sorts of things, naive and moral also shame, something you did consciously, it goes against the standards of your society and your own standards. You self-disgust, you feel low self-esteem, you feel you're not good enough. It's pressing you down, and your problem becomes heavier and heavier. That's why when God says, your sin is forgiven, the word for forgiven is actually much more concrete and interesting. It says God lifts you up, the word nasa. He takes this burden that you're carrying the whole life. How do you feel now? It's good. You can run. You can be your man. There's a moment of liberation. The psychological pressure of guilt and shame, something that you're hiding, suddenly you feel liberated. You feel like there's no need to hide anymore. You can be fully transparent. Enjoy your life. Love others. Love yourself. Love God. That's how it feels. So God's forgiveness always has the psychological, emotional effects of healing your soul, lifting the burden. Thank you. Now that He lifted the burden, this is not where He stops. Second step of God's forgiveness is He covers your sin. What's all this about? There's a whole Old Testament theology of covering, starting already with Eden. Do you remember? The first human reaction, once they transgressed against God, broke the relationship, how did they feel? Shame. There's always, when we have shame, there is 4 different reactions we have. Withdrawal and hiding. There is escape, yeah? So then there is some kind of, I forgot the second. We try to attack ourselves and others, to others. And then we have this aggressive, violent behavior that covers up for our uncertainty. So we attack others, we do a lot of things just to cover up. We feel actually naked. This nakedness of human soul is the first result of sin. We feel that if there is somebody revealing this sin, we'll be deeply, deeply troubled. We lose our dignity. We lose the respect. But God deals with this kind of social also problem with our desire to be perceived as whole. And He says, I cover you. They created their own coverage, their own clothes to cover their nudity, Adam and Eve. They tried with fig trees. They tried with human efforts, like many psychologists would suggest. They would suggest that you are not guilty, you invented this evil, or this is social construct, guilty conscience, you should not feel like that, everything is okay, whatever you decide is okay. You are determining what's wrong, what's not. But somehow we still have this parameter, this thermometer inside, or sinometer, or however you want to call it, problemmeter, telling us there is something fundamentally wrong with us. So what God does is saying, don't cover yourself, don't pretend, don't wear a mask. Be honest to yourself, I will cover you. Solution comes from the outside. He covers you, and as a result, you have a new status. Means He sees you now through Jesus Christ. Instead of seeing your sinfulness, He sees you. He looks past your sin. He does not count your transgression, the text says. He does not count it anymore. That means once forgiven, God will never return your sin in front of your eyes. Even if you get bad in future, whatever, He will never remind you on a forgiven sin. He throws your sin in deep sea where it says, do not fish. There is no more fishing. God does not fish in our past. This is a bit harder for us humans. Not only that He deals with us internally, solving this problem, uplifting our spirit, giving us new status, it covers our shame. You have a new page, new start. You are not ex-addict. You are not ex-cheater of the wife, how we humans remember everything what comes in the past. You have a clean slate. You are new as Jesus Christ because you're covered. That's a nice feeling when you fall to know you have a new chance. There will be no consequences in terms of between you and God. Nothing, no barriers between you and Him. That's a great thing to experience. Looking past your sin, He does not count your iniquity. Sometimes we forgive as human beings would forgive. Psychologists propose that there are 3 basic types of forgiveness that are somehow common in our practice. One would be, okay, I'm realizing that by not forgiving this person who harmed me, maybe raped my sister, killed my mother, killed, whatever that is, it can be a terrible sin, it can be simply humiliated you publicly. You hold this against the person, and this grows in you and grows and grows. By not forgiving, you are drinking yourself a poison. And this poison, you feel the effects. You feel burdened because you're carrying the hatred. So psychologists would say, some people say, you know what? You don't have to have a particular opinion about that person. Deal with your thing. Don't think about hatred. Don't think about him or her, whoever harmed you. That's the first level of, okay, replacing or placing your resentment and hatred somewhere neutrally, channeling it better. That's a very coping mechanism, very superficial one. Second level of forgiveness would be, okay, I forgive you, but you know what? I'm not thinking about you. You're not worth my attention. Okay? I sympathize with you. I can see why you did it. So you're showing the empathy and sympathy towards the person who did this against you. That's already a progress because you're not hating the person actively. You just simply do not want to engage with that person. You will just be avoiding and having memory of that. Maybe your emotions even get better, okay, towards the person, but you don't have the desire to go and show love. That's also human. But what God is talking here about is something which transcends our ability to do. He says, somebody hurt you, go and love him or her. Somebody hurt you again, and he or she continues to work against you, love your enemy. That's mindless. That's stupid, we would say. That's something which doesn't make sense at all, but that's this ultimate solution. That is forgiveness at its prime expression, divine forgiveness. Christ who dies for those who are actually killing him. That doesn't mean that necessarily, don't get me wrong, staying in abusive relationships is some kind of self-punishment method and so on. Not putting yourself in the way of harm. Okay, you love yourself equally well. There are some people saying, okay, I love the person, I'm constantly being abused physically in this marriage, and I will not leave the marriage because they promised to God. That's also another issue. You need to love yourself and love others equally and God. So, this is loving your enemy, transcends human capacity to do. And this results is something which once we see this love displayed and we be forgiven, some change happens from within. The text says, in your spirit there is no deceit. Reminds of Nathanael, for whom Jesus said, this is a true Israelite, and he defined him internally, in whose spirit there is no deceit. True people of God are those who are starting to experience the transformation in them. This transformation will last the entire eternity. It will last forever because our ideal is so high that we can never attain it, being like God. God will always be bigger. So we have the lifelong process of becoming regenerated and better. So when Jesus says, I forgive you, he does not say, I forgive you so you can sin again. No, go and do not sin again, he says. How can you do this? Because he gives you power. And as I said, there's also a trap there. If you think you can attain everything before Christ comes. No, this is not a destination. This is a process. Transformation starts within. We can truly experience it, yet the fullness will be in the future. So when we read now the text in light of these words, you can see the fullness of it. God takes the totality of human sin. He lifts up our burdens, psychological, therapeutical process. He covers our shame. So other people and when he sees us, he does not count our iniquity. We have a second page, new chance. And then we are being transformed from within. We are being liberated. You see on how many different levels God works. These are only 2 verses. We are already talking about 1 hour. Okay? 2 verses. This is the richness and depth of God's forgiveness. Now, there is a very great masterful mind given to this humanity as a gift, which we call Fyodor Dostoevsky. You heard about him. He lived in the 19th century. In 5 years after his imprisonment in Siberia, he is describing the depth of human sinfulness and human problem. He could see it inside and out. He was wrongly accused of leading Belinsky's work and so on, so just ends up being there, not as a criminal, but criminal to the regime. And what he did is he wrote this famous book called Crime and Punishment in 1866. I don't know, how many people read this book? Yes. If you didn't, put this on your reading list. Why? It will take you on a journey to understand the inner dynamics of sin and how God resolves it. There's Raskolnikov, who is the main actor. And he's a student, very poor student, living in a student room, burdened by the fact that he cannot even afford his school. And then he receives a letter from his mother saying that his sister, Dunya, had to marry a guy she doesn't like so she can help the financial situation of her family. And bad news after bad news comes to him, and he's searching for a solution. In a certain moment, the idea comes to him. There was an old lady, very narcissistic lady, who tortured his sister who was handicapped. Lizaveta was the sister, a great person. But this old lady, Alyona Ivanova, she was the lady to whom they owed, like a landlord. She was also borrowing money and so on. So she said, okay, this woman does not contribute to anybody. She just burdens other people, makes their life miserable. I will kill her and take her wealth and solve the problem of so good people. But then he got scared because this idea came to his mind. How can I think that? He was disgusted about himself. It's a terrible thought he would never entertain before. But then the process of rationalization starts. And he's then thinking about it. Killing her, getting her money, helps me solve my family problem, my own problem with studies. I can continue studying. And then he goes into the even pub and he meets the Marmeladov, the guy who is a drunkard, telling the story of his daughter, which is doing prostitution, this Sonia, and doing prostitution so he can earn for the family. And this burden and weight of humanity falls on his shoulders. And he then thinks, I will do you all a favor by killing this old woman. He found the X. Now something which was internal is externalized. The thought sin becomes an act. He found the X. He went to kill the lady, but he did not predict all the factors. There was Lizaveta there, a witness. So he had to kill not only the old lady, but also her sister. And then he was so confused and engrossed by his work that he forgot even to take the money, just a small purse. Everything in vain. He runs back into his room, disposes the weapon. He managed to avoid the punishment. He managed to avoid the label of him being a killer. So what he then does, goes to this feverish, semi-delusional period when he imagines this, everybody else knows about it, and they're all in this conspiracy of getting him. Then comes the police guy who is simply examining the case, giving certain allusions, Porphyry. And this inspector, Raskolnikov, thinks he must know. He would never ask those questions if he did not know. He lives his life feeling exposed and is afraid of everybody that they will reveal his sin. So he engages in this web of lies, and the whole life is a lie. It becomes so burdensome that this now psychological problem becomes a psychosomatic problem, that he's getting actually physical problems. He can't even sleep during the night. He's carrying this burden like David was carrying those stones. He's carrying those stones, and he's trying to find a solution, and it doesn't work. Until one day, he meets Sonia after the death of her father. Sonia, in the room in darker room, there was a candle, and she read the New Testament to him, especially God's power as demonstrated in dealing with the consequence of sin, of death, the account of Lazarus in resurrection. There's an interesting comment of the author there saying that we are like a butterfly with a candle in the room. Why? Butterfly will fly around in smaller circles until it burns its wings. We will not be healed until we really touch the issue and really cause of that. He realized that there is no freedom to him. He would rather now confess and change than continue this kind of half-life. And then he decided to report himself to the police. But because there was somebody else reporting also for some crimes, he ended up having 8 years to go in Siberia. And now this is where Dostoevsky shows that he doesn't offer simplistic solutions. Now you confessed and things are going well. No, he did not really change his attitude. He will still do the same thing if he could, but he realized that he has to go through punishment. In Siberia, there is Sonia going after him, every day coming and waiting there in front of this working camp. And he did not want even to talk to her, but she was always showing love, even though he despised her because she reminded him of his work. And he was mistreating her, treating bad, but she was always there on time, coming to visit him and to show him the love of God in practice, not only in New Testament text, but she becomes the messenger of reconciliation. And then comes the last chapter, which was so touching. It really pulls human soul and to the depth of divine forgiveness. and you understand, you start to wish that you experienced what he experienced. When her arm was being felt on his shoulder, she supported him even though he was her enemy. When divine love, who loves you even though you're a sinner, and you continue to harm him, but he still loves you in spite of that, beside that, above that, transcending your acts, there is something supernatural there which changes life. And he experienced in that moment of human touch, he experienced the redemption. His soul was finally free. His running was over. His escape was over. Withdrawal was over. Attempt to create new lies to cover up your previous mistakes were over. Fear that somebody will expose him was over. And he could live the life of a asher, of a blessed person. Reading this book, actually, you have all those aspects. If we have time, we will go in that, but we don't. How God takes you and gradually works through you. Forgiveness is sometimes a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, we listened to the story a few days ago in this forgiveness project. I don't know whether you're reading those. There are more than 20 stories around and in different rooms in college for 2 weeks this last, so please use the opportunity. I was humbled because I realized I really experienced a very tiny bit of this forgiveness. There were people going through terrible things. One of the grossest accounts we heard was actually from Rwanda in 3 weeks in 1994. You know, when there was a genocide between Tutsi and Hutu, the larger group actually was killing the other. 1 million people died. You're not talking about some other, this was like recently. 1 million of people died just because they belonged to a tribe. And there was a whole story, I will not go into details, but father trying to protect the family when they realized that the enemies are coming and knocking on the door, and they knew this is the last time they see each other. Father was trying to negotiate with the enemy through the doors to give time his daughters and his wife to climb the tree, hide behind the outside toilet, find their... And then he surrendered himself. And then those kids who were on a tree, they could see their father being chopped down into pieces. But slowly, a few hours, so it hurts more. They left him to bleed out until his friend who had wanted to help him hammered him to death just to help him die sooner. Imagine this in the brain of a small girl, 5 years old, that she could not speak for 5 years. There was just anger, rage, resentment. They were not Christian at the moment except their mother. Mother said, you need to forgive. That's the only way to continue to keep your sanity. But how can you forgive? Because next thing what happens is her grandma is killed in the church, trying the refuge of the church, Christian church, being killed there. And the girl was telling us the story. She felt outraged. How can you forgive those people? And then what happened is her aunt and her best friend, she was walking over their corpse, and they knew who the killer was. Finally, her mother, who was always telling her, forgive. Just forgive. That's the best you can do. Forgive. That's the solution. Then you can continue with your life. She did not say the logic in that. But suddenly, she felt this burden. She felt lack of motivation. She felt, I don't have the purpose in life. I can't control myself and my anger anymore. She said, okay, I will forgive. So she managed to get the energy, strength, pull herself up, went to the killer and says, I forgive you. And then the killer said, why? I don't even want your forgiveness. If I could do it the same, I would do it the same thing. Now forgive. It's easy to forgive somebody who is repentant. Not easy, but okay. Could be done humanly. But he would still do the same. He still remained the enemy. Now forgive. That's the depth of God's love. He loved us and died for us even when we were still enemies. And he would still do it even though we remain the enemies. That's what we're talking about these 2 weeks. There is something which Christianity commends as a solution of human problem, which goes outside human, which transcends our ability to explain it, which comes from above, and it's a divine act where he heals you from within, not only formally gives you new status, heals you from within. He looks at you with a new chance, new status, return the dignity so you can walk and love yourself and God and other people and be free as a person. And you start to then experience the magnitude of divine love in your life. There is a text the Bible comments on the reaction of Mary the Magdalene. Jesus says she was forgiven a lot because she loved a lot. Those people who are forgiven less, they love less. You see the mathematical formula? More forgiveness, more love. less forgiveness, less love. Only those people who truly love in the divine way can actually forgive. And I don't want to put this burden on you because you can't produce it. It has to come from the outside. How? How can I experience the experience of liberation that Raskolnikov experienced when Sonia came to him and show God's love in spite of him mistreating her? How can we experience in such a way as this girl experienced the healing after she really forgave and continued to forgive her enemies? So she could stand in front of us at Newbold College a few days ago and witness about the power of divine forgiveness. How can we get that? We want to have that. We need something practical that we can apply today. We come to the solution in a third part. In the light of this power of the cross and forgiveness of God, we ask you on behalf of Jesus Christ to be the agents of forgiveness, the agents of reconciliation. As we read in the text of the Bible, there is solution for our problem. This is how it goes. This is how we reach that. When we read the psalm, the text says, I acknowledge my sin to you and did not cover my iniquity. And I said, I will confess my transgression to the Lord, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. Instead of covering your sin, say it to God. Name it. Acknowledge your sinfulness. End your lifelong escape and the attempt to hide from God. Just say to Him, accept me as I am. I come broken to be mended. I come sinful. I come shattered. Pull my life together. And then the text says, do not be like donkeys. Do not be like donkeys, stubborn not to go this way. This is the way and road less traveled. Forgiveness is Christian's solution. Forgiveness is the solution of Christ, who reunites us with God, with the Holy Spirit, and in His work, unites us to each other. And then, as broken community which has been healed, we stand as witnesses in front of the whole universe about the manifold wisdom of God, about His love which transcends all human understanding. This is the demonstration of God's love that He's waiting for in His people. That we, even though we are sinful and broken, can live in harmony and be a taste of better humanity. And therefore, Apostle Paul summarized the whole message saying the beast can be killed, all those tentacles can be killed, and this is the way to go. God is reconciling the world to Himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And He has committed to us the message of reconciliation, the message of forgiveness. That's why we have these 2 weeks stating that we have some solution to offer, the solution to human problem of sin. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making His appeal through us. So He doesn't want to do it only directly to people. Through us, He's making the appeal, saying it's possible. Look at the witnesses. How many experience the forgiveness of God already in this room? Okay, some people, that's great. Good. We see the witnesses here. There are a lot of stories that we shared last week and that are going to be shared next week about the depth of divine forgiveness. We have the proof that it's possible to reconcile. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. That's our message. Go and forgive others. That's something which goes beyond human ability to do. We can't reach this state of blessedness, the state of asher, the state of prosperity, national and personal. We can't reach it with our own means. We need to ask God beyond this corrupted system to come in, interfere, come through, and change us from within, lifting us up, covering our sin, treating us as new, not counting our sin, and changing us from within. That's divine solution. That's the spring of His love which extends through you, through the humanity. So on behalf of Christ, in the name of Christ, I ask you, go and forgive others the way you were forgiven. Go forgive even those who are enemies to you, who will continue to be the enemy. Go forgive to your colleagues at work who are constantly scheming against you. Go forgive that teacher that you think gives you bad mark just because it's you and because of, go forgive those people who sinned against you because they were racist in their jokes. People who offended you just because you're a woman or man. Forgive them. That's where the healing starts. I had a chance to listen directly from Desmond Tutu, guy who was responsible for, in the time of Mandela's, work, who reconciled the nation and got the prizes for that. It was in a Sheldonian theater, 100 kilometers from here. And he had a speech saying, the hardest lesson, the hardest task that you can do in your life is in the privacy of your bedroom to say your closest person, your spouse, I'm sorry. Sometimes it's easier to die, says a Croatian singer, Giovanni. It's easier to die than to say those words, I'm sorry. So go ask forgiveness from God so you can experience this overwhelming divine forgiveness. You'll be able to love and to forgive to your enemies. Go and forgive.